I'd like to thank everyone who took the time to listen to and read my last story. So here's another creepy event from one of my night shifts. In 2017, I worked as an armed guard for a company based in Chico, California. At the time, my particular patrol route consisted of locations around Butte, Sutter, and Sacramento County. Most of the locations were the usual apartment complexes, shopping centers, and small businesses. However, a few locations were way out on the far edges of the county. These locations lacked cell reception and were beyond radio coverage. If I ran into problems, I had to fix them myself first, then go to a main road to get within radio range or a cell phone signal to call for help. Now, I very rarely encountered anything that was particularly crazy. Most of the time, it was local kids sneaking out or someone who was homeless looking for a place to sleep while they traveled along the river. So for the most part, I always felt fairly comfortable with patrolling these areas. This particular night, I was about halfway through my shift when I headed out to a local duck club to check on their clubhouse. To get to this clubhouse, I had to open a few gates and travel along some levees for about 10 minutes before reaching there. Once there, I was supposed to get out of the patrol car to inspect the area, check the doors, and do all the usual security guard stuff. However, this place had a guard goat. Yes, you heard that right, a guard goat. So I did my inspection from the vehicle for as long as Bill, the guard goat, would tolerate me. I've only ever encountered one person there, and Bill had trapped him in a porta potty. The poor guy had been stuck in there for about 2 hours before I arrived and started screaming for help as soon as he heard my vehicle approach. I had to distract Bill so the guy could get out and then take him to the main road so that we could contact paramedics to come and check him out. He ended up being okay, but I found out later that he had a broken arm, a fractured hip, and a cracked skull. So, yeah, Bill should not be messed with. Anyway, that night I pulled up, I didn't see Bill anywhere. Just as I was about to exit my vehicle, my flashlight illuminated something white under the porch of the clubhouse. I couldn't tell what it was, so I got out very cautiously to see if it was Bill. After a few tense moments, because I was worried that Bill would rush me, I was able to see him under the porch. I'd never seen him under the porch before, so I called out to him and tried to look him over whilst keeping my distance. Bill didn't even seem to notice me, though. He looked nervous, just sitting there, shaking, shifting, and constantly looking around. I figured that a predator or other person might have scared him and might still be lurking around, so I stood up and searched with my light. After a while of not seeing anything, I did a proper check of the property. Everything seemed normal, and I couldn't find anything wrong. So I returned to my vehicle and made a mental note to inform the client about Bill's unusual behavior, just in case there was a problem with the irritable goat. As I shifted the patrol car into drive, I made one final pass with my flashlight before setting off. Just to the right of the building, behind a tree, I noticed the eye shine of an animal. I stopped and pointed my headlights towards it to get a better look, but whatever it was must have ducked out of the way, because I didn't see anything. So I continued my patrol. I took the back way out, down a dirt road that led up and over the nearby river to get to the next site, which was at some kind of grain storage/workshop. I get out and start making my rounds when I hear tapping sounds around one of the silos. I head towards it, and the sound stops. When I approach the first one, an animal looks at me from around the side of it. Before I could get a decent look at the thing, it turned and ran off. All I was able to see was the blur of dark fur and yellow eyes. Unbothered, thinking that it was some random wild animal, I continued looking around the line of silos and didn't find anything. As I begin to move around the warehouse, I hear a loud bang coming from it. I run around the last of the silos to see one of the front doors swinging open in the wind. I think to myself, this isn't a good sign. Either someone broke in or the door was left open. I walk up, noticing the lights are on. I quietly draw my firearm and call out to anyone who might be inside. I don't receive a response or hear any noise from inside. I call out a few more times and make my way in. I do a complete sweep of the building and don't find anything. Sighing, I say to myself, this has just been a weird night. Just then, some tools fall off of a shelf further in the back of the warehouse. I make my way over there, but can't find anything that would have caused a large hammer and drill to fall off of the shelf. So I pick them up, go back to the front, turn off the lights, and grab the door handle. As I grab the handle, I notice that it's locked. I check the door frame and the locking mechanism for any signs of forced entry, but find nothing out of the ordinary. I figured someone locked the door, but didn't pull it all the way shut, and the wind must have just blown it open. I finish up my inspection and make my way back to my patrol vehicle when I notice something looking at me from underneath it. Again, before I can get a good look at it, it takes off. It seems to be the same type of animal that I noticed before, as all I could see was dark fur and yellow eyes. However, whatever it was, I could hear hooves clacking on the cement as it ran off. I shrugged, not thinking anything of it, and continued on with my patrol. I make a few more stops in the area and continue to notice more strange sounds, but nothing of note occurs until I reach the area's final site. The last site is a levee pump station. Now to get here, I have to travel along a levee for about a mile before I get out, open a gate, and turn off my headlights so as to not wake anyone up who lives in the house off to the side of the pump station. I'm driving along the levee with some music playing when I hear something hit the top of my vehicle. I turn down the music, slow it down to a stop, and look around to see what hit the patrol car's top. I initially thought it might have been an acorn or something similar that had fallen from a tree. But then I noticed there weren't any trees along the top of the levee. Again, I shrugged, thinking that it was weird, and continued on. A few moments later, something hits the top of my vehicle again. I slow down and look around, but I don't see a thing. This continues to happen and increases in frequency. At first, I thought it was starting to rain, or even hail. But when I rolled down the window, I didn't feel a thing. Just before I reach the gate, the noise stops. For a moment, I stood there, a bit creeped out, and just wondered what the hell was going on before opening the gate, turning off the headlights, and driving down to the pump station. Since my headlights are off, I shine my flashlight around its perimeter as I approach. Everything looked normal as I pulled up. When I finally get out, I hear a goat bleating off to my right. I look over, but I don't see anything there. I hear it again, this time more than once. I chuckle to myself, realizing that the property owner must have recently purchased a few goats. For a moment, I thought Bill had tracked me down to attack me for having the audacity to walk around in his territory. As I start to turn towards the pump station, my flashlight catches the eyes of one of the goats I heard standing near the trees not too far off. I could just barely see the guy with his dark fur, but I could definitely see his large set of horns. I laugh to myself again and say out loud to the goat, "Bill, is that you?" As I am shaking my head and turning away, the goat's bleating begins to deepen and warp into more of a growl. I freeze and stare at the animal in shock. It does it again, but this time with a lower, deeper growl. Whoa, buddy, are you okay? Geez, this one must be as bad as Bill. I laughed nervously to myself, trying not to be scared of a goat. Just then, the eyes seemed to disappear. I moved my light to see where it went, but couldn't find it. There are a few trees, but I don't see anything that it could have hidden behind. Just as I think I'm losing my mind, I hear that growl again. I move my light in the direction I heard it, but nothing's there. The hair on the back of my neck stands on end, and now I'm officially freaking out. Fearing an attack from this messed up growling goat. Then I catch some movement with my light, but it's above my line of sight. I slowly move my light up, about 10 feet above where I had last seen the goat, until my light settled on the glowing yellow eyes of what I thought was that said goat. At this moment, my brain just refused to process what I was seeing. It wasn't because of the fear exactly, but pure confusion. I started to slowly draw my firearm and make my way back to my patrol vehicle, all the while trying to figure out what exactly I was looking at. Whatever the thing was, it didn't move. It just kept growling and staring at me. At this point, I decided that I had had enough, and that the pump station would be just fine without me inspecting it tonight. I make it back to my vehicle whilst maintaining my light on it and quickly get inside. After reholstering my weapon and putting it in reverse, I looked behind me to make sure the path was clear and started backing up to turn and leave. However, just before I turn, I had to get a better look at this creature. For my peace of mind, I turned on my brights and the takedown lights on the light bar. To this day, I am still not sure what I saw. As I turned the lights on, I immediately saw a large tree. Up in the tree, between the branches, I saw the large head of a goat that, only a moment ago, was standing on the ground. I'd like to think that the goat had just climbed up the tree, but I also saw a large hooved leg, covered in dark fur, standing on the ground underneath where the goat head had just been, as if it had grown and was standing on its hind legs. I did hear more than one goat, so maybe one jumped in the tree and another massive goat was just standing under it, partially covered by it, or a humongous goat creature had backed up behind the tree before standing up. I don't know for sure. I know for certain that the goat I saw in the tree was massive, and the goat leg I saw was also massive. I'm not a farmer, nor do I make a living caring for livestock, but I've seen plenty of goats in my life. I've never heard a goat growl like that or seen one that large. Who knows, maybe what I saw was normal. I'd kind of like to think so, considering the alternative. Whatever it was definitely scared me though, so I left, quickly closing the gate and continuing my patrol. I contacted the Duck Club's property owner about Bill's behavior, and he agreed with me that it was unusual, particularly when I mentioned that he remained under the porch even after I had walked up. He checked on him in the morning, and he seemed to be his usual ornery self. I then talked to the guy who lived next to the pump station and asked where he bought his goats. He looked at me, confused, and asked what I was talking about. It turns out he had never bought any goats, and, to his knowledge, he had never had any goats on his property. I'd like to think he knows about Bill and has been secretly breeding super soldier-like guard goats. Ultimately, I had no idea what I saw that night. I don't know if any of the other odd incidents were connected. Maybe some creature spooked Bill and followed me for the rest of the night. Maybe not. I don't really know what to think about it at all. But after that night, I never encountered that thing or another goat besides Bill in that area again. So that's my story. The most logical and probable explanation I can come up with has to be that I saw two goats, one climbing in the tree and the other at its base. I really do think this is most likely explanation, especially since I was extremely exhausted that night, only getting 3 hours of sleep before that shift and having already consumed my third Monster Energy drink by that point. Despite my intense fear, I think the more commonplace explanation is the most plausible. However, I still find it unsettling. Thank you for reading this, and please let me know what you think. I have a few more of these experiences, and would be more than happy to share them, if anyone would care to hear about them.